The look of love.
She's back tonight. Would you welcome, please, Cass Elliot.
With her distinctive look and powerful vocals, Mama Cass Elliot was set to take over the countercultural music scene of the 1960s. In fact, she was on top of the world with the other members of the Mamas and Papas. But then, she let the voice of the critics push her to make a terrible mistake that didn't just destroy her career, but also snuffed her life out of her at just 32 years of age. Autopsy showed she died of cardiac arrest, but is it really the cause of her death? If so, how did she get to that point? Follow us along as we take a deep dive into the untold story of Mama Cass Elliot, while we also show you some of her rare photos. Born on September 19, 1941, in Baltimore, Maryland, Mama Cass Elliot was named Ellen Naomi Cohen. Her parents were Russian Jewish immigrants, a mix that was highly unpopular at the time. Due to their heritage, they had a hard time fitting into American society and always had to wrestle with financial challenges. However, Cass's father eventually came up with a lunch wagon that provided meals to construction workers all over the state. Cass's talent for showbiz manifested right when she was a child. At the time, she gravitated more towards acting than to singing. In picking her stage name, she chose Cass from the name of the popular actress Peggy Cass. As for the Elliot, it was a tribute to a childhood friend who died young. And so, even before she started high school, the Cass Elliot persona was ready to go. But just because she had the showbiz persona already didn't mean she had the success to boot. In high school, Cass struggled to blow up career-wise. And so, right before she graduated, she decided to leave and pursue her showbiz career seriously. For years, it seemed to Cass that leaving high school may have been the wrong move. She could hardly find any acting roles at all, especially since she was on the plumper side. But then, in the early 1960s, something started to happen. Folk music was on the rise, and this new, exciting sound highly resonated with Cass. In 1962, Cass formed her first band with Tim Rose and John Brown, known as the Triumvirate. It later came to be known as the Big Three. The band never enjoyed a wild amount of success,
Had he but told me.
but they did tour a little and form multiple connections with other musicians. When the Big Three broke up, Cass met Canadian Denny Doherty and his friend Zal Yanovsky, with whom she formed the Mugwumps.
My friends just ignore me.
Similar to the Big Three, the group was not all that successful, and after 8 months of touring, they broke up. After that happened, Cass performed solo for a while in small-scale circuits, but Denny Doherty, who would play a major part in Cass's life moving forward, was trying to form a new sensational band. Denny met two musicians, John Phillips and Michelle Gilliam. They formed a trio known as the New Journeyman. Though they were good, there was something missing. Trying to make them a complete musical unit, Denny hit Cass up and asked her if she was interested in joining the group. Suddenly, the unit was musically complete. However, with 2 men and 2 women, the name The Journeyman did not seem appropriate anymore. They struggled to come up with a new name and were about to settle with The Magic Circle. However, after watching some Hells Angels gang members refer to women as mamas on the John Carson Tonight Show, they decided to rename to The Mamas and the Papas. That was how the Mamas and the Papas came to be, after much struggle to find something that worked. For them, the only way to go was up. Musically, everything was in place for the Mamas and the Papas, but right from the get-go, their personal dynamic was off-kilter. First off, there was the fact that Cass was attracted to John Phillips, who, in turn, was attracted to Michelle Gilliam. Phillips ended up marrying Gilliam later in life, but the affection he showered her with in those days always hurt Cass. There was also the issue of Cass's size. Everyone knew her as a very powerful singer, but rumor has it that John Phillips was biased against her due to how fat she was and how she was unable to hit the high notes. In a legend propagated by Cass herself, she stated how, after visiting a construction site, she was hit on the head by a falling drain pipe, knocking her out and giving her a concussion. After 2 weeks of headaches, she returned to singing and discovered that her vocal range had increased by 3 notes. In her words, this was what convinced John Phillips to let her join the group. However, According to people familiar with the group at the time, this anecdote was nothing but a myth that Cass invented to deal with the shame of being excluded based on her weight. Cass has always sworn that the story is true. Who's to say for sure, though? Despite all this internal drama, the group was still a major success musically. They made numerous hit songs, including California Dreaming, Monday Monday, and Words of Love. In addition to hundreds of TV and radio appearances, they also toured all over the country. Throughout her time with the group, Cass was never quite comfortable. Always feeling left out, she decided to revive her solo career. It was around that time that she decided to perform the song Dream a Little Dream of Me solo.
Stars shining bright above you.
Though the song had been around for almost 40 years, Cass's performance made it a hit and gave it its highest and longest charting success. Cass's performance on this song was so great that it got her more attention than any other member of the band. She began to really believe that she could succeed in a solo career.
Yeah, I want to know if you ever talked to the mamas and the papas.
Of course I talked to them. I had dinner with Michelle this week. And, to me, they're not the mamas and the papas anymore. Like, it's Michelle and John and Denny. And, they're like,
More like friends now?
Well, more like friends than...
Family.
Than business
family.
associates.
Yeah, it was family before. It was mamas and papas. Mamas and papas grew out of us all,
So began the decline of the Mamas and the Papas. Though they never quite fit in well as individuals, the final nail in the coffin was hit by the rise of a new electronic sound pioneered by the Beatles.
And we are all together. See how the
In 1969, folk music was officially considered uncool, and the Mamas and the Papas were let go by their label. Though it was a sad time for the group, it was a happy time for Cass Elliot. Free from the shackles of people who didn't appreciate her, the sky was the limit, or so she thought. What should have been the start of a brilliant new chapter for her was instead the start of a horrific nightmare. For Cass, it was all downhill from here. Due to her increased popularity, this fall from grace was well publicized in the news. After leaving the Mamas and the Papas, Cass quickly netted herself a Las Vegas residency at a rate of $40,000 a week for 3 weeks while performing 2 shows a night. It was everything she had ever dreamed of and more. In the weeks leading up to the show, though, Cass was beset with intense anxiety. Worried about her weight, she starved herself. This lost her 100 pounds, but it also introduced a whole host of health problems, including stomach ulcer and throat complications. Bedridden mere weeks before the show, Cass's producer and band tried their best to keep rehearsing in her absence.
That day, and I hadn't been able to eat anything. Ordinarily, I know you wouldn't think that was such a hardship for me, but my blood sugar level dropped or something, and I just sort of tipped over, and I spent about 4 days in the hospital. And please, I got so many nice cards from folks and everything, but I was on the news, which is really grim because my mother didn't.
Meanwhile, her friends, who had heard of her troubles, sent her gifts and flowers wishing her well. This included such personalities as Liza Minnelli, Mia Farrow, Sammy Davis Jr., Jimi Hendricks, and Joan Baez. Though they likely meant well, this gesture merely worsened her anxiety about the show. Eventually, opening night arrived. It was Wednesday, October 16th, 1968. Though Cass was in no position at all to perform, she still forced herself out of bed. Those close to her advised her to cancel the show. However, she did not want to disappoint her fans, her friends, and her sponsors, and felt she had a duty to perform no matter what. So, when the time came, Cass Elliot dressed beautifully and got up on stage. Slowly, she began to sing. But then, in a matter of minutes, everything fell apart. As she was just a shade of herself, her voice and physicality broke down. The audience, disappointed by such a bad show, stormed out before it was all over. Cass tried to apologize to the audience and convince them to come back. However, this did not work. Just as quickly as her residency began, it was all over. Fleeing from all the bad press,
And then I have some friends in Paris who called that made the papers in Paris. I mean, I could work all my life to do something really good, a good piece of work, and nobody would ever hear about it. And just tip over somewhere where there's a camera, but...
Cass left Las Vegas and returned to Los Angeles. There, she underwent a tonsillectomy to restore her voice. The surgery was a success, restoring her voice to its former glory. But unfortunately, it could not restore her image and return her to the heights she once was. She was still ruined. so continued the decline of Cass Elliot. Every now and then, old friends from the entertainment industry would throw her a bone, trying to get her back to her former popularity. To that end, she appeared on a whole host of shows, including The Tonight Show, The Ray Stevens Show, The Johnny Cash Show, The Carol Burnett Show, The Mike Douglas Show, and The Johnny Carson Show. She also performed a number of songs that appeared on TV and movies. She was still a familiar face for sure, but she was no longer a star. In her short and troubled life, Cass also struggled to find love.
Be with somebody, and that's real hard when you're trying to maintain a
When she married James Hendricks, her friends thought it had finally happened for her. What they did not know was that Hendricks merely wanted to avoid getting drafted into the Vietnam War. He convinced Cass to marry him as a result. The marriage was never consummated, and within a year, the two broke up. She also married Donald von Wiedenmann, who was in line to become a Baron of Bavaria. Their marriage lasted mere months before the two said goodbye and went their separate ways. Cass conceived a daughter out of wedlock known as Owen Vanessa Elliott. Due to how sour she felt about her father, she never revealed his identity to her. Years later, Vanessa went on her own search for her father. It was revealed to be none other than the guitarist Chuck Day. Though she was in decline, Cass, unsettled with how things had gone down in Las Vegas, strived to retake that great stage and achieve some level of redemption. That chance came to her after she pulled off a successful show in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This time, instead of Caesar's Palace, she was performing at a smaller venue, the Flamingo. Even so, the performance was a huge success. She finally won back both the audience and the critics. People who had heard she was in bad shape were surprised about how she could put on a show so great and energetic. Unfortunately, in a posthumous biography, it was revealed that she had taken heroin right before the performance. After earning her redemption in Vegas, Cass's train to success was back on track, but it was at this precise moment that senseless tragedy struck. Determined not to let things slip away from her a second time, she exerted herself, trying to reestablish old connections.
I do a lot of variety television. That's scripted, you know, that doesn't get too personal. And, I have started to give more interviews than ever before because I've been convinced by other people around me that there are things that I should perhaps.
She tried not to miss any interview, party, or event that opened up to her. This might have been a good business strategy. However, it was very bad for her health. People began to notice that wherever she went, she sweated a lot and struggled with her breathing. Then, at the age of 32, after leaving a Jack Martin cocktail party, she went home to rest. That morning, she was found dead in her bed. Many people suspected an overnight drug overdose, but her autopsy revealed that she had no drugs in her system. Legend also has it that she choked on a sandwich. But that theory also has no official confirmation either. No matter what one believes about her death, all can agree that she died way too young. So ends the story of Cass Elliot, a talented singer and performer who had it all, lost it all, got it all back, only to lose everything again. These days, California Dreaming and Dream a Little Dream of Me still make the rounds on radio, TV, and movies. This keeps her memory and her legacy alive. If you enjoyed this video, there's a good chance you'll also enjoy the one showing on your screen right now. Click, enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you on the next one.